Hey, welcome back to my basement. This is Jeremiah Wolf. And I want to talk real quick. I had someone reach out to me and they asked a simple question. It says, "Hey, I've been watching some of your videos lately, and you have been talking about your past and present experience learning. I was curious about how do you retain so much of this information? I can barely remember my name at times. And you know, we all feel this way. Um, this is a true story. I remember this was in 2004, and I was working on a project for a big retail company, and I was running a help desk for them, a special help desk that we were there supporting technicians who were out doing installations at all the stores. So this was a an overnight help desk supporting specifically the techs doing the installs of new point of sale software and servers, and at all their stores, running cable, doing stuff like that. And ultimately, basically, what this meant for me was that I was working 6 days a week, and I was working um, at least 10 hours a day. Plus, I was driving 3 hours a day. So my minimum day was 13 hours away from home. Uh, 6 days a week, and some of the days literally was more than that. I would literally wake up, shower, get dressed, get in the car, come home, eat something, and go to bed immediately. And it fucking sucked, and I was so stressed out that the viewers, mentions actually forgetting their name. I forgot my PIN number from my ATM card. And this was back in the day where, I think nowadays we all have either, debit cards, which weren't really a thing yet. Or me personally, I just use points, so I put everything on the credit card, and then just immediate. I pay off my credit card twice a month, but I use all those points, and there's a whole thing about that because it's basically a surcharge on. Anyway, whatever. It's like a little tax that we 2% tax we all pay to the credit card companies. We all pay, even if we don't use our points. So anyway, not the best thing. But so I forgot my PIN number, and I needed that for gas and food and everything. And I couldn't. My mind was blank. And the other thing was there was this one time, same job, where I'm running around, going to this desk, going to that desk. Okay, what did you need? What did you need? I go up to this one guy. I'm like, okay, hey Jim, sorry. Okay, I'm free. What did you need? And he says, dude, you already fixed it. I'm like, what? No, what? No, you just came to me. You had something, right? And he's like, yeah. And you came over here, you fixed it, and now it's all good. I had no memory. That's how stressed I was. So while I think this guy's joking about not being able to remember his name, man, it's a real thing. It was a couple of days there where I was just so stressed. It was a scary time. And then on top of everything else, my wife left me within like a week or two of that. So it was not the best time in my life. It was not the best time. Anyway. So let's talk about how do we retain information. Now, I've talked a little bit about this in some of my other videos, and I encourage you to watch my other study tip videos. But let's just keep this one short and sweet. There's a couple of ways to retain information. The first one is simple repetition, and this is an old style. I was watching an IT training video recently, and the trainer said to the class, how do we remember? And the class is like, repetition. How do we remember? Repetition. How do we remember? Repetition. All right, good job. Yeah, no. I mean, yes, repetition does work, but it is not the best way. The best way to remember something is to engage more senses. So what do I mean by that? We want to use as many senses as possible tied into what you're learning. That's one of the reasons why I like books, because there is a tactile and olfactory aspect to reading a book. A book has a smell. A book has a feel. Turning the pages has a kinesthetic action of the muscles turning the page. So all of those things engage more senses. The more senses you can engage, the more powerfully, the easier it is to remember. So it's one of the reasons why I read a book. So it's very visual. I will then watch videos, even though I hate watching videos, but then I'm getting it auditorily. I'm hearing the person talk about it as well as the visual. And then I try to visualize as much as I can. You can't do this for everything. The processes that are happening behind the scenes in whatever technology. And what you'll discover as you do this is that, or as you look back, you even now can probably remember certain times where there was a concept that suddenly clicked. Excuse me. And one of the reasons why you can remember that is because you had an emotional reaction. And memory is heavily tied to emotion. In fact, we as human creatures, emotion is the most powerful aspect of our psychology. And it affects everything about us. And, even very logical people, you see this in science. There tends to be paradigm shifts in science that happen at generational boundaries. Why is this? Well, it's because even scientists who, the scientific process is nearly perfect. Scientists are not. But the process is nearly perfect. And the process is one of having an idea, testing that idea, and then other people challenging that idea. And through doing that, we can ultimately get closer and closer to truth. But individuals have emotional connections to these different ideas. And even though they have been trained as a scientist, even though they value logic and reason, so highly, they still become emotionally attached to ideas. And that's why we see that there tends to be big paradigm shifts in science, tend to happen at generational boundaries as the old guard retires and dies out. The emotion holding some of those ideas in place goes with them, and then new ideas can be brought to bear. And this is true for all of us and how we interact with the world, our politics, our religion. It is all about emotion, and learning to manipulate other people's emotions is the best way to learn to manipulate people. So if you ever want to learn how to manipulate people, watch a religious service or a political rally. They are master classes in how to manipulate emotions to create ideas. Anyway, so what does this have to do with learning IT? Well, you'll probably remember certain things when you got it because there was this aha moment, and the reason you remember it is because there was an emotional connection to that moment. I was just talking with my wife today or yesterday. I remember when, for me, object-oriented programming clicked. And it was, I told her yesterday, this was yesterday, and I was working on this is like a 2002, and I was building a web tool in Flash, and Flash used, it was called ActionScript, which was based on Java. It was object-oriented, and I'd studied a little bit of C++ before that, or C++, and so I was familiar with the idea of, I'd been introduced to object-oriented programming, but I never really got it. And I was, working on this project, and I was like, oh, and it clicked and it made sense. And I remember it to this day because I had an emotional connection to it. So that's sort of the goal of the visualization aspect of it, is to feel as much as you can. This is kind of a weird concept, and it's not as powerful as we'd like it to be with technical things. But by visualizing, you can create some emotions. And it sounds silly, but I've used this example before, but LSAs, for MPLS, or not MPLS, for what is my brain shutting down for? Why is oh my God, my brain is talking about stressed out. Anyway, OSPF LSAs. Whew, what is my brain doing? That was kind of embarrassing. I'm getting old. Anyway, so when I was studying the LSA types and memorizing the LSA types, and that's what I did. I visualized the flow of the LSAs through the different areas and the area boundaries, and and I kind of gave them little personalities in my visualization. I kind of personified them a little bit, anthropomorphized them a little bit, and gave them little personalities, and that helped me to remember the roles of the LSAs and what they did. So, and I remember it pretty well today, even though I haven't even looked at OSPF in months. Well, a couple months. So that's kind of how to retain. Repetition is important, but it's the hardest way to retain information. Repetition. The best way is to engage the senses as much as possible, and to always try to approach each topic from different angles. So the reading, the watching the videos. It's also very important to not overload your brain. Read until you've kind of reached your fill, and then stop. Study, not read. Study until you've had your fill. Stop, rest, sleep. Your brain needs to process. If you're constantly trying to cram, you won't remember. Your brain can only process so much. It's like if you've ever studied QoS and the token buckets and all that. It's the same kind of thing. Like once the token bucket is full, or once the bucket is empty, like that, there's no more tokens. Like you're out of luck. That's just there's no there's nowhere for the data to go. So it's the same thing. Once your brain is full for the day, that's it. You can keep cramming and studying and forcing yourself to read, but you're not going to remember any of it. So it's study a reasonable amount. When you're starting to feel like you're tired, like you've had your fill of studying, you just need to stop, and you need to go rest. And when I say stop, I do mean that like mentally stop. So it's not like stop studying and then go play a couple hours of Call of Duty where you're getting all upset and whatever. Like, no, you need to relax and go to bed. That's the best. I prefer to study and then take a nap, or study and go to bed. I don't like to study and then go do a whole bunch of stuff, because your brain, your short-term memory will have too much additional input. It'll start dropping out some of the things you've been studying. So study for a chunk, take a nap, or study for a chunk, go to bed, going to bed being the best one. So multiple types of input. Sleep after a reasonable amount of study. Don't overstudy. To a lesser extent, repetition. And there's some things, look, you just got to memorize things, and there's just no other way to do it than through just brute force memorization. That's just the reality of what we do. So that's still always going to be a part. I thought there was one other thing? And then, of course, the visualization. When there's a system that you're trying to understand the different parts of the system and how they interact, visualizing it. And if you can, anthropomorphizing the different things and kind of giving them a personality, that creates an emotional connection. And whenever there's emotion, you're going to remember things. That's why we can, even years and years and years later, remember a song, lyrics and the music. It just comes to us. Why? Because it was engaging our auditory. We were probably visualizing at the time, which can be a visual component. So we're engaging those senses, and we had a strong emotional connection to that song, which just really cements it in our memory. So that's a little bit about retention. The other thing to bear in mind is that you will not have 100% retention, and that's okay. When you're studying for a test and you take that test, it's pretty normal to, when you walk out of the testing center or log off of the testing website, it's pretty normal if you immediately forget, 30 to 50% of what you just studied. That's normal. It really is. So don't get hard on yourself if you're like, I took this test and now I barely remember any of it. Even if you did well on the test, like, that's okay. You still remember the concepts, the larger concepts. You might have to go look up commands. You might have to go look up a couple details, but you still have the concept, and that's really what's required to do your job. The things that you do every day, you will remember them because you do them every day. It's, that repetition. And the things you don't do every day, you just go look it up. Like, that's part of being a good engineer or good technician. Part of it is knowing things, and part of it is knowing how to look up things quickly and effectively. Both of those things go together to make for a really good engineer. So, all right, that's just a little bit about retention. I hope you found it informative. I'll see you in the next one.